Yo, what's up guys? We're back with another video today. And guys, UFC 314 is taking place this weekend, and there are a lot of good fights on this card. You've got Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez, Bryce Mitchell versus Gene Silva. You know, you've got a lot of good fights on this card, guys. But I want to talk about a particular fight that is going to be happening on this card, and that's none other than Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett. The reason why I'm so fascinated about this fight is because I am amazed of how Paddy Pimblett has fluked his way to fighting a top 10 ranked opponent, because I think Paddy Pimblett is one of the most overrated fighters in the entire sport of the UFC. Maybe not the most overrated fighter ever, but he is arguably up there in my personal opinion. Now, why do I think this? Well, I have a couple reasons as to why I think this. My first reasoning is that Paddy Pimblett has fundamental issues that he still hasn't even fixed, right? When you look at his entire MMA career, there are glaring problems that he has had. Even in his first fight in the UFC, he showed many problems, like the fact that when he's in the pocket or throwing hooks or whatever, he keeps his head up, which means he gets almost hit every single time. Even a 40-year-old washed Tony Ferguson was able to catch Paddy Pimblett multiple times during their fight. And when you have a Michael Chandler, one of the hardest hitting guys in that division, fighting you, and you have a problem like that, it's not a good sign for you. The second reasoning that I have here is experience. And what I mean by that is the guys that Paddy Pimblett has faced compared to the guys who Michael Chandler's faced in the UFC are night and day. I know this is a little bit unfair for Paddy Pimblett since Michael Chandler has been fighting top level lightweights for a large chunk of his career since he came from Bellator, and you had guys there like Eddie Alvarez, Anthony Pettis, Ben Henderson at one point. You know, you had guys who were high-level fighters in Bellator that Michael Chandler was fighting.
ピットブルのことを忘れていました。
It is a little bit unfair because when Michael Chandler left Bellator, he then fought a top 10 ranked lightweight, which was Dan Hooker, who he KO'd. So it is a little bit unfair compared to the guys that Paddy Pimblett's fought. So to make this a little bit fair for Paddy Pimblett, I'm only going to be comparing Michael Chandler's 2 wins in the UFC versus Paddy Pimblett's 6 wins in the UFC. So for Paddy's wins in the UFC, he has wins over guys like Luki Vanderima, Calzina Vargas, Jordan Levy, Jared Gordon, Tony Ferguson, and finally Bobby Green. Be honest, guys, did you even know who those first 3 opponents that Paddy Pimblett fought were? Because I didn't know. I know who Jared Gordon was because obviously the controversial fight Paddy Pimblett had. I know who Tony Ferguson is because it's Tony Ferguson. We all know who he is. And then I obviously know who Bobby Green is because that was his last win. Now, compared to Michael Chandler's only 2 wins, mind you, his only 2 wins in the UFC are against Dan Hooker, who is already a mildly better win than Paddy Pimblett's entire win streak in the UFC. And he also fought Tony Ferguson. Now, also, this was before Paddy Pimblett fought Tony Ferguson as well. And this Tony Ferguson was actually still pretty decent. He actually dropped Michael Chandler at this time. And not only that, guys, Michael Chandler is actually the only fighter to ever KO Tony Ferguson in his entire 30-plus career in MMA. That is actually insane. Because we all know this, before he fought Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson was regarded as a fighter who had one of, if not the best chins ever in the UFC. So for Michael Chandler to go out there and flat out KO Tony Ferguson is insanely impressive, and it makes it very worrying for Paddy Pimblett, who keeps his chin up, and he gets caught a lot when he has to fight a guy like Michael Chandler, who has been known for being one of the hardest hitting guys in that division. My final reasoning for this video is I just don't think Paddy Pimblett is overall that good. Like, do I think he's an absolute bum? No, I think he's a top 20 level lightweight fighter, but I do not believe he is like a future champion or even a top 5 opponent. At best, at living best, he can get to the top 10. I genuinely do not think that he can be a top level 20 fighter because it's just, I just can't get over it. The most blaring thing that just makes me like not believe in him is the Jared Gordon fight. We've all seen that fight. Everybody thought that Paddy Pimblett was going to smoke Jared Gordon, and Jared Gordon goes in there and actually fraud checks Paddy Pimblett so bad that the UFC actually need to give Paddy Pimblett the win. They literally robbed Jared Gordon of that fight, and it's so clear. I rewatched that fight, and Jared Gordon won every single round. At best, you can give Paddy Pimblett the second round. At best, but it's still a very close round. Now, I do also have to give a little bit of context. Paddy Pimblett did break his foot in that fight, And that does somewhat explain why he looked pretty terrible, because then when he fought Tony Ferguson and Bobby Green, he looked a lot better, but he still looked not as good. And you can actually see during the fight when Paddy Pimblett throws a kick at Jared Gordon, he actually does hit his foot. He does start to limp, so you can actually see that he did get injured during that fight. So I will give him the fair play for that, but still, most of that fight was in the boxing exchange, not when it comes to leg kicks or anything like that. And Jared Gordon was piecing him up. Jared Gordon, a journeyman in the UFC, was able to piece up Paddy Pimblett on the feet for the most part. And you expect me to believe that Paddy Pimblett is going to beat Michael Chandler? No. At best, the best way for Paddy Pimblett to win this fight against Michael Chandler is to take him down. And that is where Michael Chandler's biggest weakness is, his wrestling. We have seen multiple times during Michael Chandler's career in the UFC, he's gotten taken down by Charles Oliveira. He got taken down by Dustin Poirier at some points. I mean, if you get taken down by Dustin Poirier, who is a primarily striker, that is not a good look for you. And especially when it comes to Michael Chandler in his last fight, where he got taken down extremely badly by Charles Oliveira. I know I just said Charles Oliveira, but in his last fight, he got taken down really bad against him. So there are ways for Paddy Pimblett to win this fight against Michael Chandler, but the odds of that happening is, I just don't think that. I don't think Paddy Pimblett is on the same level as a wrestler and slash grappler compared to a guy like Charles Oliveira. Michael Chandler did get taken down throughout most of that fight against Charles Oliveira, but it's Charles Oliveira, one of the best lightweights ever in the history of the UFC. He's either top 2 or top 3 in my opinion for one of the best in the lightweight division. So it's not like he got taken down by a bum or something like that. Even with Dustin Poirier, even though I just said he's a primarily striker, he can wrestle and submit people. He actually does have a decent amount of submissions in his career. So overall, guys, this is more of just like a video ranting about Paddy Pimblett. And to be honest, I just don't think Paddy Pimblett's that good. I think he, at best, is a top 10 level UFC fighter. I think he's a top 20 lightweight in that division. I don't ever see him fighting for a number 1 contendership. If I get wrong, guys, if I get wrong against him, I will admit it. I will have my hands up and be like, yep, guys, I was wrong. I will admit it, but I just don't see Paddy Pimblett being Michael Chandler. But guys, that is me giving my thoughts on Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett and why I think Paddy Pimblett is one of the most overrated fighters in the UFC roster. Let me know what you guys thought about this video. Do you agree with some of these takes? Do you don't? The UFC 314 prediction video will come out soon, guys, so don't worry. Leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Peace!